Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Well, today, guys, we have quite the treat. We have Brad Olsen, a personal friend of mine. He's one of those guys you can't really meet without becoming his friend. He's just as real as an individual as you'll tend to find. He's been involved with a ton of projects. It's like so long to list. I met him on a project out in New Mexico that I don't even know if we can talk about. It never made the news or the TV or anything, so I don't think we can. But he's involved with. He's got his own publishing company. He has started an amazing cultural fair called the How Weird Street Fair that has a huge following where he's at. In California. He's also very involved. You've most likely seen him on all kinds of UFO stations, channels, series, Ancient Aliens, you name it. He's on all of that. He's got a history as a travel writer. He's got some amazing books on everything you can imagine, whether it's travel to UFOs to esoteric issues we have in our culture. And it's a pleasure and an honor to, even have him come on because he's just so out of my league in so many ways. He's the, the type of person that you want doing these duties and being involved with this nature of business and performing these things because he's very comfortable doing it. He's good at what he does, and he's just an all-around good guy. So with no further ado, I welcome Brad. Hey, Brad, how you doing?
Hey, Ryan, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show. Looking forward to talking with you.
Oh, it's great to have you on. There's so much to talk about. I'm super excited. You've placed yourself in some pretty uncomfortable situations lately to get right in the belly of the beast and try to get some answers to things that so many of us are interested in. And I'll just cut to the chase. You recently went to Antarctica. What can you tell us about that?
It was really an incredible experience, a place I've wanted to go for a long time, and really designed my 4-month South America trip around getting down to Ushuaia, Argentina, and finding a boat to get on to go down there. And we couldn't have found a better boat. I was with my girlfriend, Emily Infinity, and we were able to gain passage on a 74-foot sailboat that went down there. The whole excursion was 26 days. But we caught some pretty rough weather on the way down, which made us seasick for 3 days. I lost about 25 pounds. And the journey down there, let's just say the barrier of entry was pretty extreme. But once we got there, it was fairly calm waters for the rest of the trip until we had to go back on the Drake coming back. But on the return trip, we took our Dramamine on time and had already kind of gotten used to being on the boat. So we didn't get seasick on the way back, but the way there was brutal.
Holy cow, 26 days and seasick for 3 days. It's a lot to go through to get. I mean, the place is so remote. It's just so out there, and it's perfectly explained in a lot of these older texts that I'm sure you're aware of. I kind of explained in your introduction how vast your knowledge is of not only travel but the esoteric and also the UFO phenomena. And in your opinion, is it and I also saw that you have some plans to go back. I was so intrigued. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, so as soon as I got back, a flurry of interviews, coast to coast, Jimmy Church, Ground Zero, Gaia TV. It was just back to back to back the first 2 weeks I got back. And a producer in Hollywood contacted me after I was on Fade to Black and said, wow, you're very articulate. You've got this knowledge of Antarctica. We're very interested in going down there with a film crew, having you narrate or host it. And since I had been speaking to some logistic teams, groups that do specialized trips to Antarctica, they said, hey, take the mantle, lead it, give us a budget estimate, and we'll see if we can do it. And he's gotten some other people in Hollywood behind it. I kind of don't like really announcing anything until we're sure it's going to happen. But right now, it looks pretty good. And in August, when I'm heading out to Colorado to see my family, I'm going to book some time, make arrangements to meet with this logistics group and go through it all and get some kind of rudimentary budget that I could present to these people. And it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but we have some interest, and maybe I'll be going back next season. Seasons are very short. It's only about 3 months that you want to go there, usually end of November till early March, and then it gets real cold. Like right now, they're just still 24 hours of darkness at the South Pole for 4 months, and many other places very cold and very dark and very windy and dry. Antarctica is a desert continent. It's the driest continent, even though it's covered in most of the continent in 2 miles of ice. It's just very dry because of static electricity, and most of the places do not get much precipitation, so that's just a testament to how old the ice is, to be that thick and deep, and it barely ever snows or rains in certain parts where it's warmer in the summer. So many little anecdotal things I discovered on this trip that I put in my presentation. I give a talk called The Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica at conferences, including Contact in the Desert and a half a dozen others this year. So it's cool to be able to be one of the only few researchers in this field who's been down there. A lot of people talk about Antarctica, but as far as on the conference speaker circuit, I'm the only one that's actually been there. So it certainly gives me a different perspective and a way to kind of sift through fact from fiction and just let people know that I did my very best to talk to everybody I could about some of these larger anomalies we've heard of, such as massive craft in the ice, antediluvian civilizations, lost cities, pyramids sticking up through the ice, alien bases, New World Order bases, all this stuff. And unfortunately, I could not get any confirmation. It could be that people didn't want to tell me, but I kind of got the feeling that all the research people I spoke to at the 6 research stations on this trip, they just didn't know. They're pretty young and seasonal workers, or some of the chiefs of the stations. They didn't say they knew anything about it. Mm-hmm. So that's not to say it doesn't exist. It's just that what could have been something that would have been really obvious. I mean, if excursions have been going to this craft that's supposed to be 3 miles long since 1975, I would have thought somebody might have had some knowledge of it, but actually they didn't. The best I got was there was a group on the Argentinian station called Brown Base, and they had heard some of their, through inter-base banter, that there was a big UFO sighting late last year at another one of the Argentinian bases called Belgrano 2. And they were reluctant to tell us. we kind of had to wait and twist the arm of the one guy who did tell us the story, but they saw discs and some orbs, and were basically told not to talk about it, but people within the system of all the sister bases of Argentina, word got around, and we got it out of the guy, and now I'm telling you. So that was the best we got, plus absolute confirmation that there is a no-fly zone over in part of the South Pole. And that's really interesting because that's always been the rumored entrance to a massive hole in the ice. Mm-hmm. That could be an alien base, could be also superseded with this New World Order base we hear of all the way back to the time of the Nazis in New Schwabenland. Knew about it. Admiral Byrd said he flew a plane into it. It was so massive he could even turn around and come back out. Now, he was kind of a fanciful talker, but he was still an admiral in the Navy, and usually these kind of people don't spin tales like this too often. So we just kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, but the fact that there is a massive no-fly zone over the South Pole region is kind of curious, because when I brought this up with George Norrie when we were on the set for Beyond Belief, he says, why do they need a no-fly zone? Nobody ever goes there. Mm-hmm. Why do they have to prevent planes from flying in? And he's right. There are no flights going to the South Pole on a regular basis. So something mysterious is going on there, and that would be the object of our trip next season if we were able to get this funding and go down with the film crew. And supposedly the South Pole Station is run through the NSA, and might be able to see if we can get some confirmation that people from the NSA are down there.
Perfect. That would be perfect. And it is shrouded, like you said, Brad, in so much mystery, because it's a whole other, like, the intricacies of getting down there and the achievement that you performed. It's no joke. I've had friends that worked at the McMurdo base, and, they've talked about, like, be careful when you drink down there. You don't want to get too far from the main buildings, like even if you're just taking a leak, because you might not make it back. It gets that cold that quick. And it's the logistics for getting down there. It's not an easy territory to navigate. So I think it's amazing that you got the results you did. And I mean, there's a lot of real backing to this. You mentioned Admiral Byrd, and he's no joke. I mean, there was 11 expeditions. He got Medal of Honor. He was there's so much hidden in plain sight that I think we're missing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you consider that the NSA was originally formed to work with all the ET sightings, with the exopolitics of interacting with ETs and even protecting the secret, it would make perfect sense that they would have a very vested interest in this massive opening near the South Pole, only a few miles away. One of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers named Brian S., who I've listened to his interview with Linda a few times, and his information really checks out. He's been there. He knows the terrain. He knows distances. And he was a pilot out of McMurdo. And he said at one time they were going from Amundsen Scott South Pole Station to the Australian Davis Station, where they were routed to go around the no-fly zone, but it would have taken a fair bit amount of time to do that, and it was for an emergency evacuation. He said they flew over it and saw it, and it was just incredible. What's more, there were tracks coming out of Amundsen Scott that went to it and down into it, staircases, a road system along part of the ice. Just incredible information that he gathered regarding this entrance into inner Earth. I'm not sure, maybe just below the ice where the South Pole is. They are 2 miles up above the continental landmass of East Antarctica. And there are massive caves under the Antarctic ice. Here's another thing, Ryan. Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. There are 91 volcanoes, and some of those are erupting under the ice, creating these massive caverns naturally. So think about it. If you wanted to hide away, either the Nazis after World War II with their high-tech devices in New Schwabenland, or if you were an ET species here on Earth for many, many years, what better place than some of these massive caverns that have been created under the ice? Plus, of course, we know the Germans themselves were master underground base builders right through rock. And, of course, ice is much softer to bore into. So it's quite possible there are several human or ET-made bases in Antarctica that also connect to some of these larger caverns. And that's what Corey Good said he witnessed when he had the ability to go down there and go to one of these under ice bases. He said it was a natural cavern, but there were parts of it that were cleared out for other artificial means to extend the base.
It really is. It's like a real life X-Files. That I heard that interview with Linda Moulton Howe, and talk about amazing for these former military who, allegedly see these openings that are mysterious openings that could be anything, but have been documented historically, is so mysterious and fascinating. Antarctica is, and it's one of those places that just getting there is so difficult. It's like so difficult. And having the resources, you almost have to have you have to have all kinds of things in place, because it's just not, the average individual just can't go. And it's not like checking out, I'm going to drive by Area 51, for example. It's a lot more difficult than that.
Yeah, there definitely is a barrier of entry that is, as you mentioned, it is expensive to go there. It is only a certain period of time, 90 to 100 days, is the weather even going to cooperate. But I'll tell you, we got down there in our sailboat, and we did have to stamp out of Argentina, even though we were in Argentina. For 26 days, we were in no man's land, meaning we stamped out of a country but did not get stamped into Antarctica. Now, the Argentinian Navy knew we were going down there, and we had to submit a plan of some basic areas that we were going to visit. But basically, when we were down there, Ryan, I was quite surprised that we could just jump on the dinghy from the boat and pretty much go ashore wherever we wanted. The second in command, he was a young guy, only 29 years old, a bit of a risk taker. And if we wanted to go up close to see whales, he'd take us out there. Emily really wanted to climb on an iceberg and pulled up on an iceberg on 2 occasions and got to climb around on them. So the notion that it's very restricted and lockdown is not true, at least in the part of the Palmer Peninsula that we went to. There's just no one down there to enforce it. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe the region we were in is not sensitive of any high-tech things. I would think if we got close, they would have, to some of these bases, they would have alarm systems, much like they have around Area 51 or the Nellis base, and they would get tipped off that people were coming in. But since the distances are just so vast, and Antarctica is the 5th largest continent in the world. It's bigger than Europe. It's twice the size of Australia. It's close to the size of the lower 48 and Canada combined. So it is just a huge continent. And to go to some of these far-flung destinations, then it gets really expensive. So what we're looking at, just to go to the South Pole with a film crew and possibly Linda Moulton Howe and Dr. Sala, I was on a panel with at Contact in the Desert with an Antarctica discussion. Both of them would love to go. So I think the three of us exploring these locations with a film crew, well, the budget would be close to $1 million. So not something I want to front, but if we can get someone else to do it, we could really come away with some incredible footage and maybe some answers to some of these mysteries that surround Antarctica.
And this mystery around it, I mean, the conception of this entire, I mean, really that opening to me is the kind of the holy grail to it, at least from a, hollow earth perspective, or if you're looking at something that maybe is being hidden from us, or the fact that there is a no-fly zone, like you said, which that concept can propose that maybe there is something that's entirely hiding something that contains a substantial interior space.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is one of the biggest takeaways from the trip, that there are restricted areas in Antarctica. Now, according to the Antarctica Treaty, which was ratified in 1962, the whole continent is basically a world biosphere. It became accessible to all for science. They made drilling or harvesting of natural resources illegal. So everything basically below the 60 latitude parallel is protected in the Antarctica Treaty. And it's also specifically stated that no military operations are allowed to perform down there. And this goes back to the nuclear testing that the U.S. was doing in the late 1950s under Project Argus, where they were doing, if you were to read the Wikipedia page, they were in the Southern Ocean, but they were just testing these explosions at high altitude. Well, if you look at the map where they went, they were close enough to actually lob a couple nukes into the Newfoundland area of Antarctica, where the rumored Point 211 or New Berlin base is located. And it was precipitated on these military operations that the Antarctica Treaty was born, and then the U.S. went along with it. So the alternative view is, after Admiral Byrd was thwarted in Operation High Jump, 1946, 1947, and left 2 months into his 6-month expedition, that the U.S. was soundly defeated, but knew about this base, and it wasn't until about 10 years later were they able to drop a nuclear bomb and end it. So in the particular area where this Point 211 was, other reports I've heard is that it's all shot up, that there was some kind of battle there, aerial bombardments, and it is deserted. Boy, wouldn't that be a cool place to go down and explore?
So cool.
Get into some of the reinforced concrete German underground bunkers and stuff. That's definitely on my wish list if I were able to pick some places I'd like to check out. And I do know where it's located, according to many authors who've studied where Point 211 is. And I was interviewed with Ancient Aliens about it a couple years ago, too, with Dr. Michael Sala. That's the first time I met him. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible what kind of technology could have been taken out of Germany and brought down here. And it's quite possible that those were the craft that confronted the Armada under Admiral Byrd and sunk one of the ships, just a show of force. The anti-aircraft guns from the boats couldn't do anything against these craft, and they came up out of the water and confronted the Armada, sliced one of them in half with a high-powered laser, and then just flew off. So when Admiral Byrd was hightailing it out of there, he gave an interview in Chile and said, "We're confronted with an enemy that has the capacity to fly pole to pole at incredible speeds." Well, there's three things I just said there that we still don't have the technology for. Crafts that can come out of the water, lasers that can slice a steel ship in half, and fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. And this is over 70 years ago when this occurred. So we're talking about some kind of technology that is so far advanced and was so far advanced 72 years ago that we're still playing catch up in the real world to try to understand. Technology has come along, and of course there is laser technology that can be used as beam weapons, much like along the lines of Nikola Tesla. But to slice a ship in half, I've not heard of anything being announced that there's anything that strong. So again, we've got two narratives here. One that Admiral Byrd just called off the Operation High Jump and left. If you were to read the Wikipedia page on it, they wanted to get out of there. And then the other narrative that they were confronted with this enemy. Now, it's possible that this enemy could have also been a malevolent ET race that was aligned with the Nazis. Some say Draco reptilians, who also have a base in Antarctica too, and were known to have been working with some of the projects of the Third Reich, especially their anti-gravity crafts and so forth. But nonetheless, Admiral Byrd was quite spooked when he was leaving Antarctica and gave this interview to a Chilean newspaper, saying that basically we couldn't do anything to him. We had to get out of there. But the U.S. military doesn't like to lose battles, so they knew about the location of this base, and it's my belief that that's what Project Argus was all about. And I should point out in conclusion here, Ryan, that both the atomic tests of Argus and Operation High Jump are both still classified. You can't even do a Freedom of Information request to get information about both of those operations.
Oh, wow. I would have thought High Jump for sure would be, open. That is, and Argus. I mean, just knowing the location of point, 211, Brad, that, is so much. And I think what you're saying about like what they encountered, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think, what we're encountering even today, is similar to the Foo Fighters. But what Admiral Byrd was describing, leaving, saying that they could fly pole to pole, that's jumping, jumping. That's not even, that's possibly, he's possibly describing something faster than light speed there.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Certainly no plane that we've ever heard of could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds without refueling. So, yeah, we're talking about some kind of anti-gravity, free energy perhaps, powered flying machine that they were confronted with in January 1947. That's a really interesting year, 1947. You have first starting out the year with Operation High Jump. Then you have Kenneth Arnold with the first widely disseminated UFO sighting in Washington in the summer of 47. And then, of course, just a few weeks later, the Roswell crash. But you also have the formation of the CIA and Nazi scientists coming over here through Project Paperclip and starting NASA. It's a very interesting year to profile all the paranormal that was happening right around that time and the secret government and how they were working in conjunction to keep all of this a secret.
Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of secrecy around, so much of this. I've heard rumors that area that is a no-fly zone, you can see what appears to be light coming out of, I guess, what can only be described as an opening. And a lot of these are comprised of, personnel's personal accounts, which, aren't proof, but it's Operation High Jump alone, the secrecy around that. And they basically, Byrd's secret research base there, the Little America, I think they called it in its cover-up. He had so much going on, and this team was so huge, and it really, when you think about it, they were either after something they knew was there because there was such an expenditure, or they were banking on something. They had some intel that I don't think other people had.
No, and it was set up as a military excursion, even though the cover story is Operation High Jump was a research expedition. Well, why do you need an aircraft carrier, submarines, destroyers, bomber planes, fighter planes, and basically a whole military setup where they were prepared to do a land invasion? It just doesn't make any sense if this was just a research trip. And then, as you mentioned, why is it still classified? If it was just a research mission, that could be easily disseminated by now, over 70 years later. Same with the Argus nuclear testing. Why is this one of the few nuclear testing experiments that's still so classified? What is it about it that can't be told to the public? And once again, it all ties into this New Schwabenland area of Antarctica, which is directly below South Africa. And now it's called Queen Maud Land on most maps. But some of your listeners want to try to locate it on a map. Directly below South Africa, which is interesting because South Africa was a fascist country for many, many years too, including during the 1930s and 40s under apartheid, and would have been a supply depot for ships or U-boats going down to Antarctica to resupply Point 211, or New Berlin Base is another name for it. Then that was basically told to us from Admiral Dolens, who took over after Hitler's supposed suicide in the bunker in the waning days of World War II. Admiral Dolens, who was the head of the Navy, which is basically the U-boat fleet, had said that we have created an impregnable fortress for the Fuhrer in a land of the ice. And he also said in another comment that the German Navy has found all the hiding places for in the case that the Fuhrer has to be evacuated to work on his final plans. So they were already working on contingency plans in 1943 for the collapse of the Third Reich and to shepherd out all the wealth from Germany, including priceless artifacts, including art pieces that have never been recovered. Many tons of gold bullion, don't know where it went, as well as the capital from many of the German corporations that were redistributed. So there's this whole concept that after World War II, there was actually a third power. And this is what the Fourth Reich was, that the Third Reich never did surrender. Only Admiral Dolens surrendered the German fighting forces, the Air Force, ground forces, and the Navy on VE Day. But the SS never surrendered. Neither did this political component called the Third Reich. So that's very interesting. And when I was in South America, Ryan, another one of my research objectives was to follow in the paths of some of these escaped notorious war criminals, including Hitler himself. And I gave my 2 talks. The other one is called The Mysteries of South America, along with the Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica, at IONS in Petaluma. That's the center that Edgar Mitchell, 6th man to walk on the moon, started. And Stephen Bassett gave my intro, and then we did a Q&A afterwards. And he told me about this new History Channel show called Hunting Hitler, and I've now watched the first season. It's just incredible. And I went to many of the places I went to as well, such as San Carlos de Bariloche and the Eden Hotel in La Falda. Both are in Argentina. And in both places, Hitler had a refuge. So they had set up a whole network for him and his other escaped high-ranking Nazis to take on new identities, to go into the underground, to live off this third power, more of an intelligence network than standing army. And with General Reinhard Gehlen, who should have been at the Nuremberg trials on war crimes, he was brought over here because he had the whole infrastructure set up for spying on the Soviets for the Nazis. He was brought over here under Operation Paperclip to help start the CIA. So you have one of the top Nazi spies now working with the CIA. You got Werner von Braun and Hermann Oberth starting NASA, and you've got this whole network down there buying up huge tracts of land in Chile and Argentina, secret underground bases in South America and Antarctica, and then all their high-tech toys not being captured by the Allies or the Soviets, just disappearing. The Hanubu craft, the Vril craft, cigar-shaped craft that they were making. Ryan, it's quite possible that the first man on the moon was a Nazi astronaut in the 1930s or 40s. They were already going out there with some of these high-tech crafts that they had developed, including anti-gravity, zero-point energy. Major breakthroughs happened in Germany between the two wars and then were developed into some of these high-technology crafts that went missing at the end of the war, too. Fortunately, some documents and videos, not direct eyewitnesses, they were either killed or disappeared, all the scientists that were working on these projects, because the Germans were very, very keen on these high-tech weapons. In fact, till the very end of the war, they thought these wonder weapons would save Nazi Germany and turn the tide. And in fact, if the war had gone on for just another 6 months or so, quite possible they could have delivered a nuclear bomb with a long-range plane they had flying out of Norway and dropped it on New York City. They were very, very close, if not had already succeeded in detonating the first human nuclear bomb. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting how this all ties into South America, the Fourth Reich, and Antarctica, and it still is a great mystery to this day.
It is, and it's. I'm so fascinated by that. The fact that the Air Force, the ground forces, and the Navy were, like you said, handed over, but all the secret components remained, and the higher levels of that machine were left to prosper. And there's, like you said, in Argentina, it's almost kind of tongue-in-cheek because it seems that there's just such an open knowledge there in the area that they are present and established and have been there for quite some time harmoniously. And the fact that it's kind of denied by many governments is another, I don't know. And that, when you combine that with a lot of this Project Paperclip stuff and, basically the formation of NASA and the OSS and the CIA, it's like we were just in search of wisdom and knowledge, and anything that was shiny, we incorporated.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable how much we don't know, even about the real history of World War II and what might be the ramification to this modern day. Even the creation of the secret space program, that there was a German secret space program, and Penny Bradley is a speaker that I've met at a few conferences. She came out of that, and I know a couple other super soldiers like Randy Kramer, James Rink, and others who have direct knowledge of being in our secret space program under Solar Warden. So there are different agendas, different alliances with ET groups, and different reasons for doing what they do in this modern age. as well as the whole concept of a breakaway civilization, that there are humans, even second generation, who have been born off planet, both in the bases of the moon and Mars, as well as some of these, once again, described as cigar-shaped craft. And this is what Gary McKinnon found when he hacked into the Johnson Space Center in year 2000, was arrested the next year. What he saw was a giant cigar-shaped craft. So we have that technology too. We have craft like that, including disc craft. And people that come out of the Navy that work in the submarine program. This was told to me by David Hatcher Childress, one of the stars of Ancient Aliens, that he has talked to some people in the Navy in the submarining department that then are recruited into the secret space program. What they're looking for are people, men who have no families, no kids, no wife, and they prefer men who are orphans or basically have little contact with their biological family, and recruit them to be in these same kind of environments, pressurized tanks like a submarine would be, same sort of training that you would need to work on some of these crafts in our secret space program. So it's very interesting that you have what could be humans living off planet in this breakaway civilization, yet at the same time, right here on Earth, Ryan, we still have uncontacted tribes in the Amazon basin and some of the valleys of Papua New Guinea where humans, same human race, is living in the Stone Age. And then you have humans that are in this breakaway civilization. So it's an incredible time right now on planet Earth, this great awakening that's happening. I know you see it as much as I do, that people are starting to wake up and understand the sheer amount of manipulation and disinformation and frankly, lies that we've been fed for so long regarding our history and technology and so much more that could really have a great impact in our lives if all this information were to be freed up. And slowly it's happening. As our saying is with disclosure, we don't have to wait around for any government to come out and say it. Disclosure is happening from the ground up, and that's because people are understanding these concepts and putting these pieces together, getting a much bigger understanding, and seeing our place in the world today as Stone Age humans and breakaway civilization humans, and you and me somewhere in between. But very curious minds soon start to piece this stuff together and get the bigger picture of what's really going on.
It's so true. The intelligence, just information, is being treated the same as material wealth by a select few. And I think that's obvious because you get into these programs like you're talking about, and these super soldier programs and the like, and it's there's a very real aspect to those. And when coming back to Antarctica, when you talk to people that are boots on the ground, there was a funny story, who was interested in, he was wanting to date my mom, and I had the opportunity to talk to him, and he was a scientist down there. And I was asking all the wrong questions, and this guy did not, he was like, I know, it's just, there's something weird. We don't know what it is, because even eventually it's accepted that even, those who are supposed to be in the know, they realize that there's stuff happening on higher levels of governance or power structure that they're not on that basis of knowing, and they have very high levels of clearance or knowledge. And there's just the structure of the dynamic of the structure of the pyramid that we live under, and it just seems like about every country on this planet is just like that. It's a select few have the information, the power, and the material wealth, and there's a total difference, Brad, and I agree. There's every effort being made for mankind to free themselves from all these negative, archonic disruptors that are put in place and so appealing and, just easy. And, I think a lot of the masses and civilization is being manipulated in their own little way, but it's coming out. The drip is a lot more constant than I think any of us could have ever imagined.
Yeah, it sure seems to be like the dike has finally cracked, and the little boy can't put his finger in the hole anymore, and it's just starting to rush through the cracks, and pretty soon the whole dam is going to burst. It really feels like we are on the verge of some very important news regarding our connection with extraterrestrials, both throughout our history past, but also what they're doing here today and what they're watching us to see will happen. And you already see it with the government doing this soft disclosure. Last year it was the Pentagon released a couple files, and even though one of them, the Tic Tac video, has been debunked, they're at least talking about it. And even though they're still giving us disinformation, at least a narrative is being created where we're starting to hear this year with pilots now being able to disclose that they had extraterrestrial sightings, that the Pentagon has admitted that they do research these sightings and have an interest in it. So it's this slow trickle, the drip, 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 Ryan, of little bits that we're getting from the outside. But again, disclosure is already welling up from the ground level up, to the point where people like you and me absolutely know factually that it exists. So we're going beyond this little drip, 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 and we're taking on the big picture itself. And the big picture includes a lot of other things. It also includes cryptozoology and the Skinwalker Ranch, which I know your listeners, you're intimately interested in, as well as myself. And where you and I met in Albuquerque filming for the Secrets of the Outdoor TV show, and Chaco Canyon having mysterious sightings, people disappearing in national parks, the whole human trafficking side of things, and some of these people going off planet, according to Corey Good and other whistleblowers, saying that they witnessed firsthand people who have been extracted out of the earth just gone missing. You know, thousands and thousands of people every year go missing without a trace. Mm-hmm. Where the heck do they go? They don't find their bodies murdered somewhere. They're just gone. Mm-hmm. And so now we're starting to see that that there is a trade in human trafficking off planet even. And that's downright scary. And a lot of this stuff is really frightening to your average person. But it is what it is. And I think we have a duty to really try to articulate what's going on and help people understand how deep this really goes.
Absolutely. We're it's so deep that I think that, you know, we see things like the B-2 bomber that are publicly displayed over events now and things of that nature. And, you know, it's still just mind-boggling to civilians to see this craft overhead. And when you realize when that came out publicly, it was already old news. And,
yeah.
You know, just use your imagination. Think of the phone you were using then and the phone you're using now.
Good example. And then, of course, what Ben Rich said on his deathbed, he was the head of the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. He had been privy to all the secrets of backward engineering these crafts. And at the very end of his life, he saw that leaving it in the hands of private corporations was actually the most dangerous scenario of all, and decided to start saying what he knew. And he would say, we already have the technology to take ET home. Basically, whatever you can imagine, we already have. And Ryan, this is in the 1980s, he said it. Can you imagine where we are now, 40 years after Ben Rich?
So
it
frightening.
Is truly a Star Trek-like scenario of humans in outer space, teletransportation, 3D printers we know, but using it to create food, very nutritious food. I mean, there's so many applications with this new technology, it just boggles the mind.
It really is. I'm interested in some of this stuff, like this Beyond Meat stuff that is, just taking the stock market by storm. And it's like you're saying, it's just this plant-based material that they've learned how to grow or whatever. And we're it seems like the little bits that we're getting of this knowledge are nothing compared to, like you said, there's a dam of information behind that wall that we can't seem to get, that garden that we can't seem to get to, or the masses are kept from. But Brad, I can't thank you enough for being on today. Where can we all follow you, support you, purchase your books, future endeavors?
Sure. If you're interested in me and what I do, go to bradolsen.com. That's spelled BRADOLSEN.com. Tell you all the projects I'm involved with, my upcoming conference schedule. If you want to read some of my books or some of the authors I publish, cccpublishing.com. That's 3 C's, publishing, one word, .com. And I've got a public profile on Facebook, Esoteric Book Series on Facebook, as well as on YouTube. I've got 70-some videos up that I've done the chapters for my 2 books in the Esoteric series called Modern Esoteric and Future Esoteric. And those are also available now as audiobooks narrated by me. When I did my radio show, I was mainly reading these chapters on each show and then recorded them, both video and audio, and put them together as an audiobook. So those are available now. And then also on Facebook, Sacred Places, 108 Destinations, and CCC Publishing for some of my other books and my publishing activities. So it's really great talking with you, Ryan. I always enjoy it. You're such a smart person and following up on these leads, and you're a curious nature like I am. And some really great questions and some other observations that you bring to the table too. So really happy to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate it, my man. We'll talk soon.
All right, Ryan. Thanks.
Take care. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The man with the plan. He is the master with all the plans going on. He's got a quest going on, I tell you. He's always on top of it. Brad Olsen, Tales from Antarctica, wherever you can imagine it being, the secrecy that he's after, he will go to those lengths to get there. And do what you can to follow him, support him, purchase his books. They're fantastic. All of his books are awesome. CCC Publishing also has other books that are off the hook, off the chain good. The Leo Zagami Confessions of an Illuminati series, amongst many others. Also amazing stuff that Brad has written in the past. But his new stuff is, what I would probably start with and then work your way back, because the soil that he's prepared with love receives, it's gonna give you a lot of information and a lot of knowledge that has been, to me, very helpful. So Brad, one of the masters in this genre. I'm just happy to have him on. Also, guys, just try to support us any way you can. Go to hero.podbean.com if you want to download an app so you can get, as soon as these come out, they're on there. You can immediately listen to it, download it, take it on the plane with you, take it on a car, whatever you want to do. Super easy, fast way to do it on the run. And it doesn't take as long to load as like getting it off of YouTube, which usually you don't get the information off of YouTube as quickly anyway, because it takes a while to load it up. We try to drop it as quickly as we can load it. So HEROparanormal.podbean.com. Download the app. Stop by, be a patron as well. You can subscribe and get patron status to our premium content, which not everybody gets to listen to. Usually kind of more hush-hush inflow that certain forces probably wouldn't want the majority of people to listen to, we feel that it's also a better way to kind of keep those forces out. Who knows? Maybe the only people subscribing are them, but I don't think so. It's also a way for other people to get in the mix that maybe don't want to have things that are a little bit more fringy, not as mainstream. Not that we're totally fringe. That's what we're about. The weirder, the better. That's what we want. That's what we want to cover. So anyway, you can find protected content there. I think right now we only have one, but it is a doozy, a barn burner, and that's why it's there. And we're going to have a lot more coming, a lot more episodes that will be in that protected content area for patrons only. We'll have some watered down versions with the same guests on other stuff. But if you're really in the mix, you want to have the full view, and you also want to support us in what's coming out, that's a way to do it. Basically, I guess you can find us on social media, HEROparanormal. We also have a partner research organization called SWR, or Space Wolf Research, in which myself and 2 other individuals are making all efforts to do the best research we can possibly bring you from the depths of the Uinta Basin of Utah, with the highest level technology known to man right now in UFO data acquisition. So we're having Master come out and put that in. His portfolio is pretty amazing with what he's created, and his UFO DAP project, which is based out of San Luis Valley in Colorado. It's Chris O'Brien. And we're going to get some of these cameras and put them on a project that we're working on, which, I mean, at this point, we're spending tons of time, money. Obviously, we're buying property, to literally study. This is getting crazy that how we've gone, it's come full circle, and we're in it to bring it to you, and this is what we're going to do. So keep an eye out. Thank you so much for listening to Brad. Do what you can to support him. He's one of the good guys. All right, take care. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, and keep an eye for what's going on around.
It's war, that's right. War, damn, who's got your back in these streets? Cause it's war, that's right. Who's got your back in these streets? Cause it's war. Between good and evil. Get rich quick, but you kill your people. Think you the best, well you met your equals. Get your ass kicked like there ain't no sequel. What you want, some of this, just a little bit, little kid, little teens, yeah, what you little bit dreaming, scheming, memeing, Marx believing, demons, darkness.